Or are we? Yeah, all right. Sorry to keep you guys waiting. I know it's got to be super annoying. I'm always scheduling stuff and then late or reschedule, but the rainy season here in the Sacred Valley, the internet's just wonky all the time, so, I mean, it sucks, and I apologize. But I'm here now, and I actually skipped ahead a little bit to the 12th book. I think the 11th book might be another one of those kind of religious-sounding segments, but the 12th book is definitely really good. Before we get into it, I just wanted to mention that, you know, I get comments in the chat sometimes about, like, how do I reconcile these teachings with being an ayahuasquero? I just want to make it clear that none of this stuff to me is about following a scripture dogmatically. You know, I'm not trying to be a hermeticist exactly. You know, for me, it's all about diving into different schools of psychology, studying physics, chemistry, philosophy, all of the different spiritual systems that have any merit, and taking what I need and leaving the rest. And I think that's really what, maybe we could call it neo-hermeticism, is really about, because the hermetic fraternities, I guess you could call them, like Freemasonry and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and whatnot, they're really compendiums of knowledge that has been extracted from all over the planet and throughout, you know, history. And that's what's so great about it, in my humble opinion. Also, last night, I just wanted to mention, I did a music stream. If you watched it, I was horrified to discover later that the new EQ I'm using causes lag, so it looks like I'm playing like half a beat off most of the time. It's not true. You look at my hands. It's the lag. Driving me nuts. Might do some music later tonight, too. I'm determined. No matter how many train wrecks, I keep going. Okay, so let me check in with the chat one more time before we get into this. Just make sure I don't have anyone telling me the audio's a mess or something. All right, the 11th book of Hermes Trismegistus, of the common mind to Thoth. The mind, O Thoth, is of the very essence of God, if yet there be any essence of God. What kind of essence that is, he alone knows himself exactly. The mind, therefore, is not cut off or divided from the essentiality of God, but united as the light of the sun. Little hint there. And this mind in men is God, and therefore are some men divine, and their humanity is near divinity. For the good demon called the gods, immortal men and men mortal gods, but in the brute beast or unreasonable living whites are beings, the mind is their nature. For where there is a soul, there is the mind, as where there is life, there is also a soul. I should interject as well that, you know, I do believe that this stuff was actually put together by different authors. And so you'll notice like slight differences of opinion. In the beginning, we were told that the universal mind, I like to call it, created the universe as a way to know itself. And, you know, he said only God knows the essential nature of God. Well, if that was true, the universe wouldn't exist according to the same system. So an interesting aspect of this actually is that one of the primary tenets of this stuff is that everything contains its contradiction, and any statement is both true and false, and it is both true and false to say that it is true and false. On the surface, that might sound like, you know, mystical word salad, but it isn't. I think that the designations of temporality versus an eternal state of beingness, both things exist. You know, physicists, for example, tell us that time is likely not actually linear. So that suggests that if there is some sort of universal mind that is the sum total, that of the aggregation of all of its parts, it would exist at the end of time in its complete form or beyond time. But relative to us right now, it's in this process. So that's kind of how I resolve that. And I think as paradoxical as it is, it's true. In living creatures, therefore, that are without reason, the soul is life, void of the operations of the mind. For the mind is the benefactor of the souls of men, and worketh to the proper good. And in unreasonable things it cooperateth with the nature of every one of them, but in men it worketh against their natures. What do we mean by this? For the soul being in the body is straightway made evil by sorrow and grief and pleasure or delight. For grief and pleasure flow like juices from the compound body, whereinto when the soul entereth or descendeth, she is moistened and tinctured with them. As many souls, therefore, as the mind governeth or overruleth, to them it shows its own light, resisting their prepossessions or presumptions. As a good physician grieveth the body, prepossessed of a disease, by burning or lancing it for health's sake. Yikes. After the manner also the mind grieveth the soul, by drawing it out of pleasure, from whence every disease of the soul proceedeth. This is another example of content in this system that I'm not sure I agree with. I've never been a big fan of asceticism. I think self-denial is counterproductive in a lot of contexts. It's all very much dependent upon the frame of reference. Self-denial that strengthens is virtuous, but self-denial that deprives you of experience is toxicity. We are here to experience from as many different vantage points and at the greatest levels of intensity and variety that we possibly can subject ourselves to, in my opinion. So, be strong, then canst thou bear more pleasure. If you want to experience, for example, and I'm not advocating this, but I also think that it has its place, various types of intoxication. The substances that we consider the most damaging are, but in some ways they're also the most incredible experiences. That's why they destroy people, right? So the reality is that there are people that have gone into any of those spaces and gained from it and not succumbed to the vices. And that can be true of anything that can be a vice. So the issue is to have the objectivity to assess where you're at. And for some people, I'm sure it is the proper path to choose absolute saint-like chastity and all of that, But for most of us, especially if you're of my orientation, the trick is to go as hard and as deep as possible without losing yourself in anything. But the great disease of the soul is atheism, because that opinion followeth to all evil and no good. Therefore the mind resisting it procureth good to the soul as a physician to the body. But as many souls of men as do not admit or entertain the mind for their governor, do suffer the same thing that the soul of unreasonable living things. For the soul being a cooperator with them, permits or leaves them to their concupiscences, whereunto they are carried by the torment of their appetite, and so tend to brutishness. And as brute beasts, they are angry without reason, and they desire without reason, and never cease, nor are satisfied with evil. And this is a really interesting subject as well, something I was just thinking about earlier today, that was some meme I saw from some old school white wig dude Men never do evil with such commitment and joy as when they're driven by religious fervor. So that's a fact as well. And just as I was talking about the potential for vices to work in virtuous ways, everything in this world is true and false and contains its contradiction and is therefore a double-edged sword. A chainsaw in the hands of a drunken idiot is just as dangerous as any, but you can keep your family warm with it through the winter, So at the same time, the materialistic dogma of our current period does take something away from people. They have a crisis of purpose. They basically live their entire lives in an existential crisis that many of them don't realize is a crisis. And so it's very easy to steer people that haven't set their own compass in any kind of direction. The need to consume, to fulfill, and also even the desire to do evil just to get some sort of feeling, some sort of deep reaction. So I guess my bullet point here is that I would not call it religion nor atheism, but this experience of unity with a transcendental universal mind, I think is an essential aspect of human existence. And reinstating that is absolutely crucial for our continued existence, I think. And while we're on the subject, there is a ton of evidence emerging right now in favor of this universal mind. In morphology and evolution, we have a bunch of organisms from trees to rattlesnakes that are de-emphasizing or making adaptations so that people don't kill them. And the materialist scientists are doing everything they can to try to explain it away without invoking a universal mind, which is impossible. And then on top of that, we have all this evidence of non-neural intelligence in cells and slime molds and plants and whatnot. And, I know I mention that just about every stream, but it's vitally important, And then we also have Michael Levin's work in bioelectricity and whatnot that is further reinforcing this reality. So we are in a good position to actually make this case and to see a revolutionary change in the minds of man. And if you couple that development, if that trajectory continues and builds momentum, combined with the advent of super advanced technology, really the potential is almost unimaginable. But there are certain constituents that have to fall into alignment. Excuse me. Let me check in with the chat real quick too. See how y'all is doing. Fine. All right. For unreasonable angers and desires are the most exceeding evils, and therefore hath God set the mind over there as a revenger and reprover of them. Taught, hear, O Father, then discourse of fate, that discourse of fate, or destiny, which thou madest to me, is in danger of being overthrown. For if it be fatal for any man to commit adultery or sacrilege or do any evil, he is punished also, though he of necessity do the work of fate or destiny. Hermes says, all things, O son, are the work of fate, and without it no bodily thing, either good or evil, be done. For it is decreed by fate that he that doeth any evil should also suffer for it. And therefore he doth it, that he may suffer that which he suffereth, because he did it. But for the present, let alone that speech concerning evil and fate, for at other times we have spoken of it. Now our discourse is about the mind, and what it can do, and how it differs. And is in men such a one, but in brute beasts changed. Now we have a problem here. If everything is governed by destiny, and a man doeth evil, then he is a victim of God, really, or the laws of the universe. So that can't be, in my opinion, that everything is predestined, but at the same time, we're responsible for our actions. And I think I can actually explain how that both things are true. Give me a second, I gotta blow my nose. As far as I can tell, the universe is made of equal parts order and chaos. And so to some extent, a lot is dictated to us, probably exactly half. And the chaos is what allows for freedom of expression and free will. And so, we know that our subconscious really dictates the overwhelming majority of our behavior to us as well. And that fact, I think, is one of the fundamentally important constituents of this, because it imparts to us the absolute essentiality, is that a word, of awakening. Because individuation or experiences from psychedelics, experiences of transcendental awareness of any kind, really, change the percentage of automata in our being. And so if we don't want to be the victim of, or the confluence of various forces, then we have to take responsibility for freeing ourselves from the baggage of our ancestors, really, is what it is. By the way, you guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. We are still doing events in March here. It's possible if it's a single person at any time between now and then. I think I'm having a surgery in February, so I'll be out for just like a week. Apparently you recover pretty quickly. So also our Patreon crowd is really developing into a community that is actually doing stuff. People are networking. We're working on getting an arbitrage bot so that being a part of a community could actually benefit. It's kind of the reverse of paying taxes. You buy into the bot and then you get a profit back. Anyways, I don't want to give away too much, but aside from that, you get access to years of premium content, and I have a couple of videos on deck. I haven't made any videos in a while. I'm getting back to that. One of them is going to be a collection of suggestions, music for tripping, the greatest psychedelic music that I am aware of, and that's something that I've spent tens of thousands of hours delving into. And then also superintelligence, supplements and practices and behaviors that will help you to cultivate a greater mind. So, did I say consider becoming a patron? Also, there are ways to support the channel in the chat and all the videos, PayPal and Zelle and crypto and whatnot. Okay, so where were we? Now our discourse is about the mind and what it can do and how it differs and is in men such a one, but in brute beast changed. And again, in brute beast it is not beneficial, but in men by quenching both their anger and concupiscences. And of man thou must understand, some to be rational or governed by reason, and some irrational. But all men are subject to fate, and to generation and change. For these are the beginning and end of fate or destiny, and all men suffer those things that are decreed by fate. But rational men, over whom, as we said, the mind bears rule, do not suffer like unto other men. But being free from viciousness and being not evil, they do not suffer evil. This is an interesting statement, too, because one of the differences between Hermeticism and other religious systems is this attitude towards mind, that mind is God, and that the mind is an asset. In a lot of other systems, you're told that being rational and logical will fail you in matters of spirit. And I don't think that's true at all. all of these things, there's one structure, we're told. So how can the schematics or the protocol for navigating one space not pertain to the other? And in my experience, it definitely does. And also, I've always kind of felt that morality is a matter of logic, like good, being good. For me, it's not really much of an emotional process. I have Asperger's, and so I'm on the spectrum, and I've had a tremendous amount of trauma as a child, so I have emotional walls that have never been completely removed. So my commitment to what I do is more of a matter of being in alignment with logic. It just makes sense to me. And I actually asked ChatGPT about this, whether having a positive orientation, does it make sense that as intelligence evolves, you would just kind of come into homeostasis with the laws of nature? And in the Hermetic system, the more recent versions of it, I guess at least as far back as the 1800s, there is a belief that there is a morality that is true, that is basically a law of the universe. And it's sort of a product of the vectors of all of these different algorithms. It's not a matter of opinion. And it's difficult in a society where people have been constantly subjected to indoctrination and various influences, political and whatever, that kind of give them ideas that it's actually a matter of opinion, that it's all subjective. But I don't think it is. And this is one of the reasons that some people believe that if there are alien species, they would have to be benevolent, partly because they would never make it off their planet if they were actually evil. We're only half and half, and we might not make it off the planet before we destroy ourselves, And then there's also the fact that, there's no way in hell that they wouldn't be able to get here. We can teleport information already. We've had technology for 75 years. There's like a minimum of 60 million civilizations that have had technology for 10,000 years. And on the high end, the number is 300 trillion. So if we haven't been completely taken over and destroyed, it's because there are only benevolent races at that level of evolution. Otherwise, we would already be toast. So, how sayest this again, Father? Thoth asks. An adulterer, is he not evil? A murderer, is he not evil? And so of others. Hermes says, but the rational man, O son, will not suffer for adultery, but as the adulterer, not for murder, but as the murderer. What? And it is possible to escape the quality of change as of generation, but the viciousness, he that hath the mind may escape. See? And therefore, O son, I have always heard the good demon say, and if he had delivered it in writing, he had much profited all mankind. For he alone, O son, as the firstborn, God seeing all things, truly spake divine words. I have heard him sometimes that all things are one thing, especially intelligible bodies, or that all especially intelligible bodies are one. We live in power, in act, and in eternity. Therefore, a good mind is that which the soul of him is. And if this be so, then no intelligible thing differs from intelligible things. As therefore it is possible that the mind, the prince of all things, so likewise that the soul that is of God can do whatsoever it will. But understand thou well, for this discourse I have made to the question which thou askest of me before. I mean concerning fate and the mind. First, if, O son, thou that shalt diligently withdraw thyself from all contentious speeches, thou shalt find that in truth the mind, the soul of God, bears rule over all things, both over fate and law and all other things. And nothing is impossible to him, no, not of the things that are of fate. Therefore, thou, the soul of man, be above it, but let it not neglect the things that happen to be under fate. And of these, thus far, were the excellent sayings of the good demon. By the way, the good demon, the Hermeticists basically believed in the demiurgus that the Gnostics said was evil, but they don't believe it's evil. It's just like a mitigating entity, or of a lower office than the Most High, but not evil. Most divinely spoken, O Father, and truly and profitably, yet clear this one thing unto me. Thou sayest that in brute beasts the mind worketh or acteth after the manner of nature, cooperating along with their impetus, inclinations. Now their impetuous inclinations of brute beasts, as I conceive, are passions. If therefore the mind do cooperate with these impetuous inclinations, and that they are the passions in brute beasts, certainly the mind is also a passion, conforming itself to passions. Hermes says, well done, son, thou askest nobly, and yet it is just that I should answer thee. All incorporeal things, O son, that are in the body are passible, nay, they are properly passions. Everything that moveth is incorporeal. Everything that is moved is a body, and it is moved into the bodies by the mind. Now, motion is passion, and there they both suffer, as well that which moveth as that which is moved, as well that which ruleth as that which is ruled. But being freed from the body, it is freed likewise from passion. But especially, O son, there is nothing impassible, but all things are passable. But passion differs from that which is passible, for that passion acteth, but this suffers. Bodies also of themselves do act, for either they are unmovable or else are moved, and whichsoever it be, it is a passion. But incorporeal things do always act or work, and therefore are passible. Let not therefore the appellations or names trouble thee, for action and passion are the same thing. But it is not grievous to use the more honorable name. One thing I want to mention, let me see, how did he put it? Okay, so nothing is impassable, but all things are passable. That may not have been the line, but basically it was another one of those contradictions where, this idea of permanence and impermanence. It's interesting to consider that it suggests that they knew, these ancient Hermeticists, that in modern parlance, you would say that on the level of thermodynamics, information is lost. But on the level of the quantum, all information is retained. So it's kind of a relevant little note there. So Thoth says, O Father, thou hast delivered this discourse most plainly. Hermes responds, consider this also, O son, that God hath freely bestowed upon man above all other living things these two, to wit, mind and speech or reason, equal to immortality. These, if any man use or employ upon what he thought, he shall differ nothing from the immortals. Yea, rather going out of the body, he shall be guided and led by them, both into the choir and society of God and blessed ones. Again, what I was saying a little bit earlier about how at a certain level of evolution and intelligence, reason dictates this morality. And that's kind of what he's getting at there. And it's not just that. If you are able to understand the laws of nature and the limits and to walk with knowledge wisely, then you are able to construct a life that is deeply satisfying to you. And under those conditions, you are much more able to develop the capacity for that type of reason that would liberate you from samsara, to use the Buddhist designation. Do not other living creatures use speech, O Father? Hermes, no, son, but only voice. Now speech and voice do differ exceeding much, for speech is common to all men, but voice is proper unto every kind of living thing. Of course, we know that to be not true, because dolphins talk, and there's this woman that has this school. You can find it on, I think, the Facebook Reels, where they teach parrots to read and write on a computer. I've watched them one of the other birds died, and the parrot spelled dead on the computer, and then it was like wanting to know what happens when we die, and it was like having an anxiety attack. And another one, it was worried it had bone cancer, like specifically bone cancer. It was having like an anxiety attack because its wing hurt inside, and it was like, is it cancer? Is it bone cancer? Yeah, so there's that. The speech of men is different, O Father, every man according to his nation. Hermes, it is true, O son, they do differ, yet as man is one, so is speech one also. And it is interpreted and found the same both in Egypt, Persia, and Greece. But thou seemest unto me, son, to be ignorant of the virtue or power and greatness of speech. For the blessed God, the good demon, said or commanded the soul to be in the body, the mind in the soul, the word or speech or reason in the mind, and the mind in God, and that God is the Father of them all. Therefore, the word is the image of the mind, and the mind of God, and the body of the idea, and the idea of the soul. Therefore, of the matter, the subtlest or smallest part is air, of the air the soul, of the soul the mind God. And God is about all things, through all things, but the mind about the soul about the air, and the air about the matter. But necessity and providence and nature are the organs or instruments of the world and of the order of matter. For of those things that are intelligible, every one is, but the essence of them is identity. But of the bodies of the whole or universe, every one is many things. For the bodies that are put together, and that have and make their changes into other, having this identity, do always save and preserve the incorruption of the identity. But in every one of the compound bodies there is a number. For without number it is impossible there should be consistence or constitution or composition or dissolution. Let me check in with the chat. Because sometimes what's going on, guys? Audio will just freeze. So, where are we at? But unites. Without number, it is impossible that there should be consistence or constitution or composition or dissolution. But unities do not beget and increase numbers, and again being dissolved, come into themselves. And the matter is one. But this whole world, the great God and the image of the greater, and united unto him, and concerning the order and will of the Father is the fullness of life. And there is nothing therein through all the eternity of the revolutions, neither of the whole nor of the parts, which doth not live. For there is nothing dead that either hath been or is or shall be in the world. But the Father would have it, as long as it lasts, to be a living thing, and therefore it must needs be God also. And therefore, O Son, can there be in God in the image, how can there be in God in the image of the universe and the fullness of life any dead things? For dying is corruption, and corruption is destruction. How then can any part of the incorruptible be corrupted, or of God be destroyed? Therefore, O Father, do not the living things in the world die, though they be parts thereof? Hermes answers, be wary in thy speech, O son, and not deceived in the names of things. For they do not die, O son, but as compound bodies they are dissolved. But dissolution is not death, and they are dissolved, not that they may be destroyed, but that they may be made new. Thought then asks, what then is the operation of life? Is it not motion? Hermes answers, and what is there in the world unmovable? Nothing at all, O son. Thoth asks, why doth not the earth seem immovable to thee, O father? Hermes, no, but subject to many motions, though after a manner it alone be stable. What a ridiculous thing it were that the nurse of all things should be immovable, which beareth and bringeth forth all things. For it is impossible that anything that bringeth forth should bring forth without motion. And a ridiculous question it is, whether the fourth part of the whole be idle, for the word immovable or without motion signifies nothing else but idleness. Know generally, O son, that whatsoever is in the world is moved either according to augmentation or diminution. But that which is moved liveth also, yet it is not necessary that a living thing should be or continue the same. For while the whole world is together, it is unchangeable. O son, but all the parts thereof are changeable. Yet nothing is corrupted or destroyed and quite abolished, but the names trouble men. For generation is not, but since neither is changed death, but forgetfulness, or rather occultation and lying hidden. Or better thus, for generation is not a creation of life, but a production of things to cease, since, and making them manifest, neither is changed death, but an occultation or hiding of that which was. These things being so, all things are immortal, matter, life, spirit, soul, mind, whereof every living thing consisteth. Every living thing, therefore, is immortal because of the mind, but especially man, who both receiveth God and converseth with him. For with this living wight alone is God familiar, and in the night by dreams, and the day by symbols or signs. And by all things doth he foretell him of things to come, by birds, by fowls, by spirit or wind, and by an oak. Wherefore also man professeth to know things that have been, things that are present, and things to come. That little bit there, let me get a little spoon of my pasta here. My nose. It's so cold here right now. Okay, so what he was saying about men being able to know God through a tree or an animal, that's what I was getting at with science. And it's really ironic that science, in its effort of removing spirit from the world, of reducing the ineffable to the level of the mundane as a sort of protocol, they have accidentally, as I think, who was it? Was it Oppenheimer that said the first sip from the cup of natural sciences will make you a atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting. The thing that I mentioned about rattlesnakes and trees and elephants devolving their trunks and whatnot so they don't get shot, this is the kind of thing that Hermes is referencing. And this is really one of the fundamental constituents of this kind of worldview, that all of nature is allegory, and that it is a reflection of the underlying structure that we might call spirit, manifestation of the body and mind of God, basically. And so it is learning to read the book of nature that illuminates in this context. And it's interesting because Hermeticism, a little known fact, is that it actually is a very sophisticated form of shamanism. The Kaikion and the Eleusinian mysteries, there's good evidence that there was a psychoactive beverage that was consumed in all of these mystery schools, which all descended from Hermes. So if you look at South American shamanism, for example, you see the same exact thing, although in a less sophisticated form. There are plants that will treat a snake bite that have leaves that look like snake heads, and it's not bark, but the skin of the plant, it has exactly the same pattern as a Dos Equis, which is the most venomous snake in South America. Also, dragon's blood is a red latex that comes from a tree, and sangre de drago, you cut the tree and the red blood-looking stuff pours out, and studies have shown that it assists the blood in restoring damaged tissues, to a degree that defies scientific explanation. Looks like blood, helps the blood. And for issues of the digestive system, particularly the stomach, Dr. Sandi, it looks like breast milk. And, if you have issues with your mom, for example, those often manifest as stomach problems. And on, So I just wanted to kind of elucidate that point. Wherefore also man professeth to know things that have been, things that are present, and things to come. Consider this also, O son, that every other living creature goeth upon one part of the world, swimming things in the water, land whites upon the earth, flying fowls in the air. But man useth all these, the earth, the water, the air, and the fire. Nay, he seeth and toucheth heaven by his senses. But God is both about all things and through all things, for he is both act and power. And it is no hard thing, O son, to understand God. And if thou wilt also see him, look upon the necessity of things that appear and the providence of things that have been and are done. See the matter, being most full of life, and so great a God moved with all good and fair, both gods and demons and men, taught. But these, O Father, are holy acts or operations. Hermes responds, if they be therefore holy acts or operations, O son, by whom are they acted or operated but by God? Or art thou ignorant that as parts of the world are heaven and earth and water and air, after the same manner the members of God are life and immortality and eternity and spirit and necessity and providence and nature and soul and mind and the continuance or perseverance of all these which is called good. And there is not anything of all that hath been and all that is where God is not. Thoth asks, what in matter, O Father? Hermes responds, the matter, son. What is it without God that thou shouldest ascribe a proper place to it? Or what dost thou think it be, peradventure, some heap that is not actuated or operated? But if it be actuated, by whom is it actuated? For we have said that acts or operations are the parts of God. By whom are all living things quickened, and the immortal? By whom are they immortalized? The things that are changeable, by whom are they changed? Whether thou speak of matter or body or essence, know that all these are acts of God, and that the act of matter is materiality, and of the body's corporality, and of essence essentiality, and this is God the whole. And in the whole there is nothing that is not God. Wherefore, about God, there is neither greatness, place, quality, figure, or time, for he is all, and the all, through all, and about all. The word, O son, worship and adore, and the service of God is not to be evil. Let me check in with the chat, because I am considering saving the 11th book for the next stream, or the 12th book, because I know it's really good, and I don't think we have... Friday night is always a bad time for me to stream, so let's see if we have... Yeah, we don't have much of a crowd tonight, so I think I am going to save the 12th book for next time. If you guys have any questions or subjects that you would like me to offer some sort of contribution on, I'm happy to do that for a bit. How do I do this? There we go. Make it a little prettier up in heel. Also, I'm considering doing a music stream. It was terrible earlier. I was working on all my EQ stuff and effects and whatnot, and I was like almost happy with it, and the program crashed, and I lost it all. So that's where the iffiness is. If I can't get it together before it gets too late, then I'm not going to do it. But so, anybody have any questions, comments, or? Going once. And it takes a few minutes for the lag. So. All right. Well, while I'm waiting to see if anybody pops anything in the chat, tomorrow I'm going to get into plant medicine again for the first time in a really long time, and we are still doing events, so send me an email if you're interested in visiting. Have I seen any of Bernardo Catstup's work? No, I have never heard of him. I'll check it out, though. I mean, I don't think I have. Bernardo Catsup. Looks like it's right up my alley. Yeah, thanks for that. I'll check it out for sure. I am in the process of trying to schedule an interview with David J. Brown, who achieved some degree of fame as an author in the 90s. He's working with, or just published a book with a woman named Dr. Rachel Turetsky, and the book is basically an attempt at integrating Timothy Leary's 8-circuit model and Robert Anton Wilson's quantum psychology model with their ideas. And it turns out that David works with Rupert Sheldrake. And I had a really crazy experience a number of years ago where I was kind of called out to do a sun ritual, and I felt silly and I didn't know any rituals, and I didn't really want to do it. But during this time period, this voice that I was interacting with, it always turned out to be worth pursuing. So I decided to humor it. And without getting into all the details of the story, it established beyond a reasonable doubt that it knew things that humans couldn't know. And over the years, I came to understand that stars are conscious, and that our consciousness comes from light. And it turned out that during this solar ritual, there was the most intense solar storm in 26,000 years estimated. And I'm not saying I caused it with the ritual. I'm saying that whatever brought me out there clearly knew it was happening. And so a couple of months ago, I did a stream talking about this stuff, and I compiled some videos to react to, which like Michael Levin's research and Bohm, implicit and explicate order stuff. And I, as an afterthought, I saw this Rupert Sheldrake video, and I'd never read any of his stuff, and I kind of knew he had something to do with like morphology and, you know, field intelligence or something. And so I put it in there, and at one point he started talking about how these solar storms are an opportunity for the sun to interface more directly with the consciousness of the planet. And that just, it blew me away, because I'd experienced that to a degree that was pretty convincing. So hoping that this could lead to a conversation with Sheldrake, because I've landed right in his little group. And of all of the intellectuals or scientist types, you know, on Earth, that would be the person that I would need to talk to probably the most. Michael Levin would be another great interaction, but that's probably pretty difficult. Sure, he's very busy. Have you been able to record any music? No, I'm not really even trying to do that at the moment. Mostly I just do, oh, you mean ever or like lately? Ever, there are some live recordings of bands that I was in, but I've never liked the idea of going into a studio and recording. I don't know why, you know, I come from the Grateful Dead school of thinking, and they only did that because it was a contractual obligation. Their studio albums were not very good. So I've always just, you know, I like to improvise collectively live, but I've really not had any desire to record. I'm going to, though. I'm going to start writing again, and I'm working really hard to try to learn DAWs and whatnot. You know, I had never bothered with that until the last couple of years, and it's given me a hell of a headache. But I'm not giving up. But yeah, I mean, you can see streams over the years, me improvising over backing tracks. That has never appealed to me either. Improvisation where the magic happens for real. It's true, but I kind of had a failing in my logic about that, I guess, I mean, the reality is that I think at least at one point I had the potential to be, to make a career out of it. But I refuse to think about it like a business, and you need artifacts like that to, it's just part of what you have to do. So now, in retrospect, I regret my ideological curmudgeony because it was kind of self-defeating in the long run, I guess. Yeah, so we're totally off topic now, which is fine, but I'm sure you guys understand the point of this, but I feel like I should make some sort of closing comments about the nature of all this stuff and what we're to be doing with it. The convergence of it's not really spirituality so much as a moment where it has become possible for us to find the mechanisms that support things like parapsychological phenomena and response-based adaptations that fly in the face of neo-Darwinism and that even epigenetics can't really account for. We are really in a position where mainstream science is backed into a corner and they have nowhere to go. While we're on the subject, I should also mention that you guys have probably noticed, if you're paying attention to this kind of thing, that Michael Levin is not a household name. And if you consider that this man has used electricity to bring dead clumps of skin cells together that you can watch on video make decisions, that's crazy. I mean, the guy's literally Frankenstein. He's the first human being to like bring some dead matter to life. And that's big news, I would think. His ability also to overwrite the genome with changing transistors and cells and how they interface with electromagnetic fields is also a big deal. And I would strongly suggest that this is deliberate, that the oppression of the evolution of consciousness is one of the primary concerns of empire. They need humanity to be purposeless and shallow, and you really cannot govern people that have freed themselves from cultural indoctrination and political indoctrination and religious indoctrination. They're ungovernable. This is why the mysteries, the Hermetic mysteries, were banned in Egypt. They were banned in Rome, and they've been demonized in modern media. The Illuminati's evil, and they're trying to control you, and these satanic weirdo sex cults in Hollywood are the Illuminati. No, they're not. No, they're not. Go read Weishauпт's papers, you know what I mean? Or think about the name Illuminati. No, they're not. They demonize these things because they know how empowering they could be for people if they caught on widespread. So they convince. Have you noticed too that the people that they convince that are the ones in the alternative narrative world on the fringes, because these are the ones that might find it and realize what it is, and then they have a problem. So they flood the fringes with this anti-Freemason, anti-Illuminati propaganda, and it's not legit. It really isn't. I'm not saying there are no black lodges, but overall, that's what that's about. It's also one of the reasons why science and self engineering through polymath education has been sort of extracted from spiritual systems and religions, because really, in the absence of those things, spirituality is just an abyss with no sense and no reason. And all you have to do is come here to PSOC and go around to meet some of the retreat owners and whatnot. You'll see very quickly that this kind of pop culture spirituality that has no imperative for intellectual development, that, it doesn't do anything, doesn't work. And vice versa. Science would benefit tremendously from releasing just a couple of its foundational dogmas. That teleology, that an intelligence in the universe is off limits, right? There's actually a lot of Hermetic wisdom that would have catalyzed science a century ago if it hadn't been excised from the protocol and sort of institutionalized, that anyone that even references it or thinks about it, sounds panpsychist, is ostracized. Even demonized. All right, guys, I have a tremendous amount of work to do, really, and I'm just so frustrated that I've put so many hours. I played an 8-hour stream last night of music, and it was hit or miss, mostly because of sound issues, but 8 hours. And at some point, I hit a button in the EQ and just ruined my guitar tone, and I haven't been able to fix it still, so... Anyways, I appreciate all you guys spending this time with me. I hope it was illuminating and enlightening. As soon as I get all of this sound issues, reinforcement stuff fixed, I will start doing longer streams again, but it's just kind of distracting and annoying, and it gets late, and I'm like, God damn it, I'm going to be up till sunrise. I don't think I made a penny last night in 8 hours, which is crazy too. After, all of the hours and hours and hours and hours that I put into the sound reinforcement stuff, I used to always, make $100 and $150 or something in 2 hours. So just crazy, it's funny how that kind of stuff goes. You put in tremendous amount more work, and it's less fruitful somehow and more frustrating. But I know what it is. It's that curve, just got to get over the curve, and the reward is there. Glimmering. So, thank you. Consider becoming a patron. At least please hit the like button. Share. Turn your notifications on. My channel has less than the average for people clicking all notifications. And I'll see you guys again in a few days, unless anybody's put a question. No. Yeah. All right, guys. Good night.